Hello, good evening, everybody. So sorry for that. I think there's some internet disruption. I think the opening video got a little bit clingy,
Distorted.
and so welcome back to another week, a new week, new beginning. Happy Monday to all of you. Welcome to another episode of Elephant in the Room. How are you, Taranjeet?
I'm very well, Mui Han. It's yes, indeed, it's a new beginning, new week for us, and I can't believe we are currently on our what episode
44.
is this? There we go. I can't believe it. We're almost hitting half a century here, man. Wow. Who would have ever thought? Who would have ever thought a couple of months back? Anyway, what do we have planned out today, Mui Han?
So in our usual mechanism and tradition, every Monday we like to do a recap of the week, and this is almost like the week, the whole week in one show, right? That's how we usually call. But particularly, we wanted to recap the crystal learnings and pearls of wisdom from our guest speakers, and I think that is our focus for today's show, right? So maybe
Indeed.
before we actually dive into that, just want to really quickly do a quick shout out to all our viewers. So both Sujit Bhagan, hi from Perth, thanks for tuning in. Good friend KJ Ko, welcome, welcome. Mr. Chong Sulim, thank you for your support. And of course, Dr. Mike is also here. Hi, thank you for all your support. So maybe let's just dive into it. Let's recall back on Tuesday itself, last week. We had the pleasure of hosting Kevin Yong from Optimus Consulting. Maybe you want to share quickly with audience
Absolutely.
what are
Absolutely.
some of the key learning points that we can take from Kevin's session.
Absolutely. And in fact, before we do that, let's just set the context here. I mean, we're hitting our almost 50th episode soon to be. So the journey thus far has been very much focused on how things have been progressing within the MCO period, not only in Malaysia, but also regionally. That's the first one. The second thing that comes across is we started to look at implications to individuals from a retrenchment aspects. That was with Sharin Azmi. From what are some of the legal liabilities and legal perspectives, and that was with Dharman Sivalingam a long time back. We also then started to look at some of the forms, and that was with Hira Singh, that we needed to look at as we go down this path. But what was also interesting was we went down the path of looking at it from a sectoral perspective. First one was around the area of construction. We then went into the area of academia, and then we went into the area of high-tech companies or startups, as the case may be. The whole progression then revolved into the implications of this to working adults, graduates who were graduating this year, and working adults and business owners. And that was a fundamental focus where we saw some big heavy hitters coming to the table, like Joachim, who talked about this from a Facebook's perspective. We had Shanto coming in, bathroom fittings and
Photo book, not
photo
Facebook.
book. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. My sincere apologies. Photo book. And as you can see, I'm not reading from any script here. Yeah. I
If
just
we
want to
get
be clear.
somebody from Facebook, we will do a 1 hour show.
Yeah. No. So a photo book. My apologies, Joachim. So we then went down this path of looking at Sean To and his perspective around kitchen and bathroom fittings, and it was amazing to just hear that level of vibrancy. And then our focus started to talk about the reality. So that was basically yesterday. Then the focus became today. What are we now doing now? And that's the reality that we are now looking at. And that's the key area of action. And that was some of the things that has now brought us to where we are today. And we started out this with Kevin Young. And that's where we are now bringing in Kevin Young. And Kevin was basically bringing in his perspectives around the recruitment space, being a recruiter now, a senior recruiter dealing with a variety and ambit of recruitment challenges within the organization and sector. He then talked about the recruitment side from an unsettling time that we are facing today. Couple of things for me, Muihan, that came out very emphatically with Kevin. One was the fact that businesses were left unclear about how they were going to manage themselves. No one had any inkling that this was going to hit us. So the uncertainty of the role that they were playing, and more importantly, the uncertainty of their very own survivability. That was fundamental that came out. The second one was, given these issues that we're facing, the selectiveness of recruitment now became even more important. I needed to get the right type of thinking, right person, right job, and all that. Yeah, that's a given. That was also here yesterday, but it's now the right type of thinking. We heard that from Damiri. We heard that from the likes of Andrew Lau, that talked about the agility and that whole mental agility that we are bringing to the table. What was also very interesting was the fact that the businesses now had to cater for this reality. And one of the things that we looked at was this thing called the Applicant Tracking System. And that was
ATS.
quite intriguing. ATS. Mui Han, what are your thoughts about that particular discussion that we had?
So I think ATS has been around for the longest time ever, or long lah. It's been, I think, if you track history of ATS, easily they've been around for 10 years. And most big companies would already have invested in an ATS system if they are doing recruitment in a large volume, I would say. Just a tip, this one I learned from the ATS expert. So because ATS compliance resumes or CVs is very different from normal CVs, right? Because if you don't do it correctly, the robot don't know how to read, or the AI don't know how to read. So I asked the expert this question: how do you then differentiate if I apply for a job with a company, whether it's ATS or not ATS? So this is the tip that she gave me, very important for all the job seekers out there. The next time when you apply for a job, and if let's say the job site, whether it's a job portal or is in the company career page itself, post you to another page that needs you to key in a login and a password. The moment they ask for a login and a password to be set, that is ATS. Okay.
Nice.
If there's no ATS, they will just ask you to drop your CV there or email. This is
Nice.
the thing. So this is something I find that most people have not understood it well, but they fail to realize that in today's world, everything is so voluminous and fast. And in the recruitment world, there's no different. So if there's like a 4 to 5,000 application for one single particular, I know one multinational which has their management training program every year. There's easily 5,000 applicants for a 50
Wow.
spots, you know.
Wow.
So with that, they got no choice but to use an ATS system. So with that, the voluminous filtering of CVs is needed to be done by the robot, unfortunately. And with that, where I think Kevin comes in is to say that make sure your CVs are ATS friendly. And one keyword to do that is to make sure that you don't have too many fanciful boxes or graphs or whatever in your CV. We see that quite a lot with the younger people today because the computer just read plain text.
Absolutely. So one thing that came out there, Muihan, for me was the fact that an understanding of how these ATF algorithms, we will not know for sure how it works, but at least an appreciation of this will do well for those people who are seeking for jobs. And you know what? That is the reality. It's not about getting before a recruiter, a warm bodied recruiter, but we need to get through that first level filtering, as what Kevin stated. But allow me to go on to the next step. So, the other thing that came out very nicely was from Kevin's discussion around the area of what skills or what type of jobs or roles are there in the future. And quite, uh, for sure, it's around social media. We're seeing it all the time. I
Yeah.
mean, for crying out loud, we've got people like Sean who is going out there and putting bathroom fittings on social media. You can't go wrong. And I was absolutely astounded at that time, and I'm still astounded today. The fact that he's able to go out there and make those sort of sales. Good for Sean. Good for those guys. The other
Yeah.
one is big data.
Yeah.
The understanding and the analysis programming of this type of understanding and richness that the data brings to the table is absolutely brilliant. The third one is the area of logistics and that whole digitization of the logistics space, because that's what it is right now. And lastly, interestingly enough, he talked about private tutoring. And I found that quite intriguing, simply because I think a lot of guys are now staying at home in terms of kids and university students, but I still need a level of appreciation and understanding. And that for me was quite intriguing. The last thing, allow me to do this, Mui Han, was the fact that I truly, truly liked Kevin's genuine offer of support for the first 10 applicants to submit their CVs through to us, in order for us to provide feedback, for him to provide feedback on air the way we're doing right now. And for that, kudos to Kevin for even thinking about this. And we are delighted to be the platform to talk about this moving forward. Muihan?
Yeah. So one last thing from Kevin was, I think he talks about don't underestimate that the completeness of your CV, and always get a third party to look at it. Therefore, why he offered that independent review, because it's important. And unfortunately, he says the next breath is recruitment is also a numbers game. So the more platforms that you are on, your chances are higher to secure that job, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So on the next day we had on episode 41, and this is my Star Wars coming in. Episode 41, we had the absolute delight of having Ranukka Singham
Yeah.
coming into the room, the elephant in the room, and she's the founder of Image Revamp Consultancy. So what were your takeaways, Muihan?
So I think it was a very, very exciting show with Ranukka. Uh, Fairly given that I think most perception, at least mine, until I met her, was when we talk about branding and professional imaging, it has a lot to do with grooming and clothing. I think that is the, how to say, bias or prejudice view that most of us have. And I remember having that conversation with her after the show, which we can tell the audience that she was also very happy that in our show last week with her, we have managed to raise the conversation a few levels deeper than just talking about appearances, clothing, makeup, hairstyle, and so on and so forth, which she always get these kind of questions in other shows. So that was, I think, very interesting that we got from Ranukka. Primarily, don't get me wrong, she also emphasizes the point of dressing right appropriately, especially in this current teleworking or telecommuting kind of environment. Just because you work from home doesn't mean you should dress casual as you are in home. In fact, that professionalism starts with how you dress. If you
Absolutely.
dress the role, then you will actually become more confident, uh, or able to command a better attention as well as focus with your stakeholders on the other side of the screen. So I thought that opening charge was very important, a good reminder for all of us out there, because I think most of us working behind the screen know this, but sometimes we still tend to pull a fast one. Hopefully that people will understand because I'm at home, and so on and so forth. So I think that was a timely reminder. What about
Absolutely.
you? What did strike
So
you?
sure. So I like the tips and tricks that she brought to the table. The ability now to make sure that you don't have any cluttered stuff behind to distract the audience. The ability now to engage. And to be fair, we are little newscasters in our own right, because that's what this is about. It's a one to many versus that one to one that we are usually comfortable with. The other one was the actual the ability now to ensure that you look into the camera, and I'm trying to do that now more and more, looking
Same,
into the
same
camera.
here, same here,
So
guilty.
so I I value that particular that particular trick and tip quite substantively. But for me, the whole area around engaging and having that engagement through this camera, although it is somewhat clinical, to be fair, but the idea is to allow that level of engagement to go in, and making sure that you do not disconnect or hide not only your camera or discontinue with your voice, the audio. It has to be on. And I've started to do that myself, because you know what? You want to be part of that conversation. And the moment you off the audio, it sounds like I've just taken a seat back. So that was for me important. Mui Han?
Yeah. So I think one of the key one was the silence of 1.2 seconds lead to disengagement. And I really enjoyed that tip because I was trying to, for the longest time, to rationalize or to balance every time I have a webinar or a video conference call, whether to speak slower and wait for a response, or should I continue to stop talking so that, yeah. So I think that able to give us a very good tip, and I think we had a wonderful time with Ranukka. Her tips were very practical, easy to adopt, and I think that 6 ideas that she shared, which we subsequently made a video out of it, been shared tremendously throughout different organizations and company, and everybody came back to feedback. That was a very very good tip. That
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
on Thursday we had what Adli Walid, who is the HR head for Sime Dhabi Oils, and we wanted to focus on the things that a global corporate, in fact, in this case, one of our national icons, uh, doing in this COVID period, as well as in post-COVID period, some of the practices that they adopt and what is working for them. So maybe you can share some ideas which you thought was very useful from Adli.
Sure, absolutely. And now Adli came across as a very positive. He always is, and I've known him for some time. Are you there?
Yeah.
Adli came across as a very positive individual. He talked specifically around the 3 Ps. The first one is around profitability. The second thing is around processes, and the third one was around people. And he actually went down the path of in saying very categorically, if we do not look after our people, it's very difficult to have them look after us as a corporate entity. So that was amazing. And I loved the stuff that he's doing to try and drive engagement down at a staff level. It cut across a variety of things, whether it be the type of opportunities that we are now having in the refectory or the canteen, as we will call it. So, what are we now doing in the refectory to ensure that there is social distancing and they are perceived in their own mind as being kept safe, and that management is looking after their best interests? So, that was interesting. The second one was around the area of financial assistance, to go out there to buy your own laptops or your own other smart devices to support you in the work that you're doing. So that was interesting for me. The other one was around making sure that individuals had the opportunity to actually ensure that they were not foregoing homebound children. Now that for me was absolutely amazing, because the organization is taking the effort to work with the individual during these difficult times, to effectively manage the children that are at home. Amazing. Well done to Adli, and well done to Sime Darby Oils in this regard. Mui Han?
So I really like the idea of setting up a call center to manage and cater for the mental health needs of the big workforce that they have. This is almost like the in-house befrienders. You can
Yeah,
actually
very good.
call a third non-vested party to really maybe do on the online counseling, so that at least you get a third party to hear you out, as well as maybe to challenge your current paradigm a bit, so that you are not stuck or spiraling in some sort of negativity. And we
Yes.
do agree, I think even when we had Mel on the show 2 Fridays ago, we do agree that in this working arrangement, especially working from home, it is mentally, in terms of mental well-being, there is additional stress to our workforce and to our professionals, not only because of the changes and the uncertainty out there, but at the same time, we never needed to be that constantly engaging with different stakeholders that we have,
Yes.
especially key stakeholders at home, which we couldn't switch them off now, no? And that while it's a blessing to some, could be also a challenge to many. So I think that
Right.
portion of mental health is really important. The other point I
Um,
like, yeah,
please go ahead. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
the other point I like about Adli was talking about uh, consistency in people development, whether
Yes.
it's COVID or no COVID. People development agenda needs to move on and thrive on, because at the end of the day, people are the one that will drive the business, and it is the organization's duty to ensure that they are not only equipped with the right skills, but are also consistently motivated to push the team and organization further. So that point I thought was very, very critical. And I'm so happy that Samdabi Oils is doing that.
Actually,
Taranjeet?
one more thing. Yeah, one more thing I would like to add on is his pragmatism about how we manage the day to day or the week to week discussion. So a lot of times people are talking about, yes, but I need to ensure that I go down, and we'll be hearing a little bit about that from David when we go down here, and his thoughts around this. It's about this micromanaging, and you're seeing this happening all over. And Adli's response was actually no. Let's now go out there and talk about weekly milestones rather than weekly tasks. And if I can go out there to hit those weekly milestones and the outcomes on a weekly basis done, it would naturally progress into a monthly outcomes that we're looking at. And I like that because that reflects a level of maturity. There's a level of progressiveness. I am not banging down your door, and neither am I standing over your shoulder just to make sure that you are responding to this. What was interesting is if for whatever reason the employee is not able to deliver, different conversations will then start taking place. And that for me was exceptionally insightful. Muihan?
I had just a thought when you say that, because I didn't had that mindset when I was talking to Adli last week. But when you how I say recap that
Refresh.
he was sharing that how the task is now broken into bite size and looking into weekly or maybe sometimes daily targets per se, so that it's much manageable and easy to push forward. One of the areas that comes across is also this whole idea of neuroscience. So they believe that writing down your goals into small bits, that's why they ask you to have a notebook to write down your tasks to do, task to list, and getting them done and crossing them out actually releases happiness chemical in your brain. So every time you cross something out, you naturally feel better. And this is one way to actually cheer your spirits up in a downtime or a perceived downtime like this. Okay.
Very nice.
So
Very nice.
let us talk about our last guest, which is David Jones on last Friday. And we really had this wonderful conversation with David, who is the managing director of Chartered Management Institute for Asia Pac. And David came onto our show to talk about how does a new manager now need to behave, or what are the skill set to focus on in these very unsettling times, right? And it was a really wonderful pleasure to talk to David, and very insightful. Just that I didn't notice that he's been in Malaysia or been in Asia for more than 30 years. So it's like, I think more Malaysian or more Asian than anything else compared to some of
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely. We start off our discussions with a teh tarik. You go figure, like, yeah. So yeah, let's order a teh tarik. Anyway, for me, David was an insightful discussion. The one key takeaway, if there's anything that I took out of this, was the area of authentic leadership,
Mm.
being an authentic manager who genuinely believes in what they're talking about. And that cuts across the area of communication, it cuts across the area of how we manage our staff, it cuts off the area of how we manage ourselves. So he talked about self reflection, self understanding, before I even talk about others, and that's an EQ approach, and I'll leave it to you, Muihan, to talk a little bit more about that. But that then correlates very nicely in my mind around authenticity and that level of honesty that, and he did not, I think he could not stress it enough during the course of our conversation with him, and it made total sense to me. Mui Han?
So I think in the areas of authenticity, what triggered me when he said that was actually very interesting, because we always talk about the need to train our managers and our leaders to communicate well. So in the learning and development industry, we got all these courses, all these development sessions, training. And to be fair, we ourselves are sometimes also involved in some of this execution of such programs, right? But I think that the one that comes very clearly is you can have all the skill set, but if you are not authentic, your staff will see it through, your stakeholders will see it through. You can't continuously fake it until you make it. You know, it's a very raw human emotions that can be seen. And I think maybe just a additional thought, although David didn't say this, I think when communicating on a screen like this, I think it's even harder to fake it because now we are zooming right into your face, and all your facial expression shows uh, if it is not authentic. And I think
Yep.
this current reality magnifies that quite significantly, I would say, in that sense, right?
Absolutely.
One last
Absolutely.
thing about David I wanted to talk about was I think he shared a few examples of micromanagement. Manage the working from home environment, implemented either hourly timesheets or daily timesheets, or even install software to spy on their employees. So I think one of the feedback, of course, is all this action will lead to a negativity, creating a high distrust environment that leads no good to both the organization and the individual. And as a professional, I will fully concur with that. If we can't have the simple trust with our people that we work with, yeah, we better invest money into AI and make all of them robots, so to say.
Absolutely, I totally agree, and I think the for me the other thing was he was bringing into the table experiences of CMI within the region, and CMI is a massive organization that is mandated to drive the betterment of leaders and managers, and with David's role as a managing director across Asia Pacific, also sitting here in Malaysia. And that's how I've got to know him and I've got to work with him sitting on the board here. You're able to now see certain nuances that are playing out. But at the end of the day, it's all the same. Humanity is humanity. People are people. Managers are managers. It's how we go out there to drive this. Enough said, Muihan. We are currently hitting
Yep.
the final part of the segment. What do we have in store for the coming days?
So tomorrow we are maybe because we have started the journey on corporate restructuring and change management. I think previously we have at least 3 shows on that. So I think would be good that we finally conclude this series in a sense on this topic with the final installment. So tomorrow, stay tuned for the finale on corporate restructuring and change management. Just
Very
to
good.
share both our expertise and experience on this topic and how leaders and organization can actually take some pointers or some practical ideas to start working on their own transformation journey. And yeah, that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow.
Excellent. So, and this week, just to share, we've got a decent week planned ahead. It's going to be
Yes.
very insightful. We will be looking at CEOs in their own right. We will be looking at COOs in their own right, leaders and captains of their respective companies, and the sectors. Pray tell, Muihan, what will they be?
So to start with, let's just want to assure our audience we are going to talk to 2 CEOs and 1 COO, and all of them are from major organization. One is a multinational, another one runs a regional business, and last one is a big conglomerate here in Malaysia. And we're going to explore the very tricky question of the retail industry because I think one of the biggest hit industry in this period is, of course, the retail shopping mall industry. And we have invited a very special guest to help us to further understand this on Wednesday. On
Excellent.
Thursday, we have a proud pleasure to actually invite somebody from the insurance industry, and our guest is leading a very big insurance regional firm, or sorry, it's a multinational insurance firm. But I mean, he's the leader from Malaysia, and he will be coming on to also talk about the impact both to the industry as well as some of the innovation that is going to happen in their space or already happening, and what is the result. And lastly, maybe on Friday, who do we have? Maybe just to
Yes,
give some background.
thank you, Mui Han. We have an individual who is a noted authority in the area of disruptive leadership. He has written countless articles, and he's currently in the process of finalizing. I think it's already published his second book, specifically in this space. His first book came out last year, Disruptive Leadership in IR4, and this year is about disruptive leadership in this current day and age with COVID-19. And my understanding is it's the first of its kind at this point in time, which is absolutely brilliant. So stay tuned, and you will be getting it hot off the press. You can't get any hotter than the guy who actually wrote the book. And this is real. Mui Han, back to you, buddy.
All right, we have come to the end of the show. Thank you very much for tuning in on this Monday. Sorry, the connectivity a bit wonky today, off and on, off and on. But we hope that this doesn't happen in the next few days when we have those wonderful guests. So with that, we want to wish all of you a very good evening. Take good rest, and see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Bye-bye.
And stay safe, and stay safe. Bye-bye.